Please welcome a visionary leader who turned personal mastery into a movement that's changing lives. My boss, James Becker.
Wow, thank you, everybody. This is great. I really appreciate you all coming and being here today, and means a lot. I want to share a story about myself. When I was growing up, I had two older siblings who were very bright. My older brother was an accomplished athlete. He played in the marching band as the first tuba. He was a great student, a student leader, president of the 4-H club, and I watched as he was praised for his accomplishments over and over again, as my sister was for hers, but not for me. On the other hand, I was not a stellar student, quite the opposite. I was filled with energy, riddled with what I believed were learning disabilities that most people didn't really understand at the time. And compared to my older siblings, I was not an achiever. I was very ordinary. In any case, my game of comparison, even as a child, led me to seek the attention of kids I should not have been hanging out with. I ended up getting bullied horribly in grade school and in middle school, which was traumatic. And I began getting into significant trouble and self-destructing early. Because of my circumstances, my spirit, even as a young man, was dying. It was being crushed slowly. I felt less than on a daily basis. On the outside, looking in, not worthy in other people's eyes or in my own. Frankly, I felt that the die had been cast already on who I was to be and to become for the rest of my life, that I was someone not capable of any real achievement or contribution. It wasn't anybody's fault. I had really good parents. It was just that I was, as a young child, that was my perspective of life, and I was really a miserable young person. The reason I share that is not for sympathy, but because that context is super important for this talk and to explain how my life has gone ever since that time period. One day, in the 6th grade, I believe, I went to go see a movie with my one true friend, Paul Comerford, and that movie was Rocky. Looking back now, it was and had an incredible effect. It was a crucial and pivotal for me, literally for the rest of my life. I just didn't know it then. I didn't look like Rocky, I didn't talk like Rocky, but I was 100% connected to his character. You see, Rocky was an ordinary person, very ordinary. Really, he was just doing what he needed to do to get by in life. He spent a lot of time alone. I did as well. He would talk to himself because nobody else was listening. He lived in a small, dark, dingy apartment with a worn-out picture of his hero on the wall. It was really a great metaphor for how he felt about his life, and I connected with this. He wasn't bad. He wasn't devoid of all merit. He had a good heart. He was kind to strangers, and in many ways, gentle and humble. But deep down, you could feel the weight of life, and the loneliness was beating him down, if you remember the movie, and he was not fighting back. And that's why this story mattered so much to me, because I wasn't fighting back at the time either. Truth be told, I didn't even know I had a choice to fight back. Instead, I felt a lot of disappointment and shame in myself, even at that young age, just like Rocky. The real estate industry is full of people just like that. Ordinary people who are doing what they need to do to get by, but don't feel really great about themselves. Many of them try to put on airs to seem special in other people's eyes. And I see this day in and day out. I'm sure you guys too. But a lot of these people live in a dark, dingy apartment inside their own minds, ones that they don't want to come to terms with. You know, the story of Rocky is not, to me, a story about a boxer or a boxing match. It's a story about a spiritual journey of an ordinary person just like all of us. It's a story of what happens when opportunity arises. The movie isn't about a man beating another man in the ring. It's about a man refusing to stay beaten by life. It's about a man stepping in to opportunity. He's an ordinary man, written off by the world, his friends, by himself. His true opponent is not Apollo Creed. It's his own self-doubt and his own choices. This is a story about inner triumph, not outer victory. Rocky doesn't win the fight. Sorry for the spoiler alert. But at the end of the journey, he wins himself back. Some in this room need to win ourselves back. At the beginning of the movie, when Rocky is given the opportunity, he is faced with a choice to step into the opportunity and give everything he has, or to see it as a negative, a distraction, a can't-win scenario, and just to phone it in or not to do it. At first, he's afraid, fearful. He doesn't want to step into opportunity at all. He doesn't see it as an opportunity. It took one or two people caring enough to tell him the truth, if you remember his trainer, and to believe in him, and he needed that. That's what helped him make the choice to give everything he had, to run into the fire, so to speak, to accept the pain and the struggle that would come along with it and transcend it. Our industry is full of people who are beaten down. Kristen mentioned that, like, oh my gosh, you're a real estate agent. They're tired, they're worn out. People just going through the motions. We see it all the time. The truth is, opportunity is all around us. It's all around us, but we don't choose it. Maybe that's because we're surrounded by so many others who have also resigned themselves. Ordinary people too fearful to step into the light. Rocky is a story about redemption through suffering, and that increased suffering is often what is required to eventually transcend the everyday suffering we put ourselves through, particularly in business. The training montage, the bruises, the exhaustions, they're all metaphors, in my mind, for spiritual purification. Rocky endures pain willingly, not for the external reward, but to prove that his spirit can transcend the limitations. And for those around him who also want to do better, his fight gives them permission to believe again in themselves. Rocky lifts those around him. He lifts the ones who have stopped dreaming. That was me. When they see him do it, they say to themselves, if he can, maybe I can. His rise becomes other people's hope, and that to me is service, and it is love. In short, Rocky is spiritual because it's a parable about rebirth, about finding meaning through the struggle, love through humility, and giving everything you have. The story of Rocky reminds us that greatness isn't measured in applause, it's measured in how fully you show up for yourself and ultimately those you love. When Rocky sets his goal to go the distance, he's deciding for himself what winning means for him. It's a spiritual act of defiance that requires a significant amount of courage. That movie was an awakening for me. I can't remember another time I felt so inspired leaving the theater. If you're too young to remember, people were cheering in the theaters. Even though I didn't understand the complexity of the script and the story then, what I did know and what I was inspired to do was to choose at that moment, to choose to fight. Not physically, but spiritually, to fight against allowing life to beat me down, to fight for my opportunities, to choose my own measuring stick, not what others decided to measure me by. Being in business is also a spiritual journey. So many of us in the real estate industry have allowed ourselves to become like Rocky at the beginning of the movie, beaten down by the industry. We see it all the time in our work. They're beaten down by the macroeconomics and by circumstance. But what I've learned through my process is that we can choose to fight. A spiritual fight that requires some vision for something better, a faith that it can be achieved, and someone to believe in us and help us when we need it. For most of our clients here in the room, you guys don't have it easy. This is not an easy journey. I often have conversations with people, what we call the valley of despair. It's a really ugly and lonely place. It's where you lose hope. In the valley of despair, you can't see the horizon. You lose your vision. Those who are there feel incredibly loneliness. I'm sure some of you can relate. And it's a very, very dark place. But in the valley of despair is what every single successful entrepreneur must traverse to get to the other side. You must be able to go through the valley. Going through the valley and continuing forward is a painful process, and it requires a kind of suffering that most people will not endure. That's what makes entrepreneurs so special. It's what makes you guys so special. Like Rocky, to get out of the valley of despair, you must be willing to suffer. I want to say that again. You must be willing to suffer to be redeemed in a sense. You must be willing to be uncomfortable, to feel beaten, to be exhausted, to embrace the fight, and to keep moving forward to get to the other side. Now, the funny thing about that, going for it, is that there is this kind of spiritual warfare, often from those you love the most, the ones that you're trying to lift yourself. The truth about human nature is that when we strive to do better, when we pour into ourselves to become better, to lead, to contribute, some people around us don't like that. Your friends, your family, I've seen it over and over again. I've seen it from spouses, from brothers and sisters and friends. They don't want you to succeed. Why? Because if you succeed, your success will require them to look themselves in the mirror, and that can be incredibly uncomfortable. And their anxiety around this fear is projected onto you. If you do not succeed, they'll never have to confront their own shortcomings. But those people are going through their own spiritual warfare or mindset warfare, and they do need us. They need you to win so that you can inspire them in spite of their negativity. Just like in the story of Rocky, Adrian's brother was jealous of Rocky's attempts, if you remember, to become better. But our people, you can be the high tide that lifts all boats around you. And that's what happened to Adrian's brother, Paulie. So what is fusion anyhow? Fusion is not really about real estate at all. It's just where our people, you guys, have found their canvas to paint your art. Fusion is a group of ordinary people who believe they too can do extraordinary things through effort and service to others. They've chosen this business of real estate, and some have left really good, steady, paying jobs to do so. Some are taking incredible risks. Some of you are taking incredible risks. And at the same time, they're often the breadwinners of their family. They're the emotional centers. They're the nurturers. They're the ones who set boundaries. They're their family's leaders. And you guys and they go into the world every day to slay dragons with no guarantee. The paradox, the spiritual part, is that you and they don't do it for themselves. They do it almost 100% of the time for the people that they love. They do it so they can take care of those who count on them. They do it to make the world a better place. But economic forces, stress clients, and a host of other factors, they become beaten down and their light of their fight is dimmed. At Fusion, we are filled with people who have their own Rocky-like story, who are currently figuring out whether they will rise and fight or allow circumstances to dictate their lives. They need to fight for themselves and they need to fight for others. But when they focus on serving others little by little, good things can happen. One such example is our own Senior Vice President, Andrea Metza. When she joined Fusion, we had far more ambition than we had any type of structure. And truth be told, we were a bit of an SHIT show. At the time, I needed her help. The team needed her help, and she stepped in to take the toughest job of all, dealing with people who we were letting down. Fusion was letting down. And around that same time, one day in the shower, Andrea felt a lump in her breast. It turned out to be cancer, the most aggressive kind, and it was already at an advanced stage. Life changed in many ways for Andrea, but she never quit Fusion and never took a leave of absence. She would go to the hospital, sit for hours receiving chemo, taking calls, writing emails to clients, and joining meetings on Zoom as the poison of chemo slowly dripped into her body. Through exhaustion and pain, through the loss of her hair, through her body literally being mutilated, she showed up every day. Why? Because her team, the company, the clients needed her. She's a Fusion legend. I kid you not. One day during the process she was going through, she unexpectedly joined a Zoom meeting to make sure something was fixed or take care of something or to make sure it was appointed. I don't remember exactly why, but what I do remember, I was in this meeting, and as she came on her telephone, she was laying on a gurney, being wheeled down the hallway to the operating room for one of several major surgeries that she endured. Didn't matter if it was surgery, her body, her health, it all took a backseat literally to what she felt was her purpose. She needed to make sure something was going to happen to take care of a client, and that's where her mind was at. Why? Because she was focused on her team, her teammates, Fusion's clients, and a humble act of service. Andrea Metza is an ordinary person who has become extraordinary through acts of service and grit. Andrea Metza inspires me. That makes me think about one of our first founders, Travis Winfield, who you'll hear from later today. Travis grew up in the East Coast, in the heart of our nation's military community. At just 17 years old, he dedicated his life to serving his country. 20 some odd years later, after an honorable and successful military career, Travis began a new chapter in real estate. But beyond his deep dedication for his family and his wife and his kid, his heart lied in serving others who have served our nation's veterans and their families. Through his career, he has donated countless hours to mentoring and helping veterans who need a hand, tirelessly so. So much that he left his daily real estate practice to start his own service organization, working full-time and investing his own money to help his brothers and sisters in arms, our U.S. veterans. Travis Winfield is also an ordinary person who has become extraordinary through acts of service and grit. Travis Winfield inspires me. And then there is Margie Nixon. She is another incredible example. I met Margie in a Zoom call that I did personally with her, and I reviewed her stated due north. And it was not about material things, car or vacation or boats or any of those types of things. It was simply to financially take care of her family. When I asked her, who is your family? She said, my sister. Her sister had been widowed young, left with 3 children with very limited resources. Margie felt a spiritual tap on her shoulder. If you know the kind of tap I'm talking about, it feels like one that comes from God or an angel or something similar. And despite having very little herself at the time, she made the choice in the commitment to become the breadwinner for her sister's entire family, stepping into one of the critical roles that her sister's husband had vacated when he was tragically lost. Through the years, she supported her sister financially and emotionally, enabling her to focus on what mattered most, raising those 3 kids. Today, her sister's children are thriving. One is in graduate school, and another one just graduated medical school and is starting her residency in Florida this year. When I first met Margie on Zoom, she was in a hospital visiting a past client who is very ill. I asked her, why do you think you're successful? And she said immediately, it's because I never see a commission check. I just see people who need help, and I step into that. Margie Nixon is an ordinary person who has become extraordinary through acts of service and grit, Margie Nixon inspires me. Rocky's faith is in meaning, it's in purpose, it's in the belief that life can matter. When he sets his goal to just go the distance instead of winning the fight, he's expressing a kind of prayer, not for victory, but for worthiness. Rocky, Andrea, Travis, Margie are the standard of the humble servant, the ordinary man or woman chosen for an extraordinary test that they have stepped into and have been the high tide for others. Like spiritual heroes across time, they represent human potential to rise when the world says you're just ordinary. They accept the call. They do the work. They transcend the circumstances. This is a spiritual journey. And Fusion is full of people just like this. This room is full of people like Rocky in their own way. If you are in the part of your story that has not yet made the decision, the choice to go all in, to suffer pain, to face fear, to take a bet when there's no guarantee, it is not too late. You can be the Rocky of your own family and your own community. You can be the high tide that lifts all boats, each and every one of you. And just like Rocky, you have opportunity. We all do. To start the journey of rebirth, you have to find meaning through struggle, faith through adversity, and love through humility, and to fully show up for yourself and those you love. I am not a religious man, and I don't know when the world started or what happens when we die, but I do believe there's a higher power. I feel that deeply, a God, and I believe He wants us to do our best. I truly believe wholeheartedly that this is what God wants us to do, to accept the opportunities and then fully show up and give everything we have for ourselves, for the people we love, and for society in general. To be the high tides that lifts all boats, regardless of your profession or your art, so to speak. All you need to do is to choose to see and accept the opportunity and challenge before you. And trust me, it is there. The opportunity is there. You must, though, choose to do the work that can lead you from an ordinary life to an extraordinary one, which is determined by your own standards between you and your God, so to speak. And if you have the courage to go on this journey, to step into the fire of the unknown, to be willing to increase your suffering, that's a good sales pitch, so that you can transcend everyday suffering for you and for those you love. Or if you've already chosen to do so and are currently on that journey, I promise you this: Fusion will be in your corner. Fusion will be by your side to help you, to encourage you, to push you, to cheer you on, to celebrate you, to bet on you every single step of the way. Thank you. That is the love that we have for you, our partners. That is partnership. That is our journey. Ladies and gentlemen, make friends, serve people, be extraordinary. Thank you very much.